You live now. Yep, and
All right.
the image is right there.
Hey, look at that.
It's not the most beautiful static image to have, but
Hey,
let you
it's a
see
work
the
in progress. I like it.
let you see the profile pic with a bit more
It's a
detail.
note that looks like a car.
Yeah,
Audio shop.
it's not a note; it's a bass clef.
Okay, I only took piano for like 10 years.
You don't, and you really should know that by this point.
I wasn't good at it. Oh, well, anyways, I guess we're getting going. So,
All right.
yeah, so,
You want
hey,
to
everybody. Yeah, I could do
introduce?
some introductions. I'm Cooper.
I'm Sam. I didn't
Oh, there
realize I
we
was
go.
supposed to jump in.
And this is audio. Oh, I thought we were going to do it at the same time.
Okay. This is Audio Shop
Audio shop.
Podcast.
There we go.
Your music fix.
Yeah, episode 1, The Now Now by Gorillaz. Yeah, so I guess to start it off, we should just kind of discuss why we chose this album in particular to start off with.
Yeah. Well, I guess the main reason is before. I guess not, but as this as this album was coming out, I was in a musical rut. I guess you could say I was really only listening to ELO albums.
Yes, that's Electric Light Orchestra. For anyone
Yeah.
who doesn't know, it's a very good artist. Um, maybe not a only artist that you should listen to.
It. I really enjoy it, but like that was all I was listening to. And finally, Cooper was like, "Hey, you should listen to the Gorillaz. They're pretty good." And so I started listening through. I didn't do the complete listen through on my first one. I kind of just picked and choose a couple albums. But then this one was coming out, and we both got really excited for it, and that kind of brought up the talk of starting a podcast.
Yeah, and here we are now. And I know for you, this is the Gorillaz, at least overall, or maybe a little outside of what you usually listen to genre-wise. A little more hip-hop,
Yeah,
some punk influences as well.
I'd say they're moving more towards electronic nowadays, which is a bit
Yes,
more
which
up
is
my alley.
your wheelhouse.
That's probably why it made it such an easy transition.
Yeah, especially with the Now Now. I say it's one of their most electronic albums.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that with all
Well,
the songs.
of course.
So I guess I'll launch into the overall history of it.
Yeah, go for it.
So, for those of you that don't know, and to save you the brief Google search it would take, Gorillaz is a virtual British band, actually created in 1998. The constant members are 2D, Murdoch, Noodles, and Russell, who are often featured in the animated music videos that the band puts out. They host a slew of platinum albums, with 13 awards won from Grammys to MTV Video Music Awards. And to date, they have released a total of 6 studio albums, with a couple other compilation albums sprinkled in there.
Yeah, and when you say virtual band, we do mean like animated, as in they have the members of the band are fictional. The Murdoch, Noodle, Russell, and 2D.
Right.
They are cartoons that are drawn.
Or sometimes badly CGI animated.
That is also something that occurs. That has luckily been a little less, present in this album release. But yeah, but the real music is done by Dan Albarn, who I believe he's also associated with the rock band Blur, and then all the art is done by Jamie Hewlett. So they're kind of like the tag team of. It's very interesting that their quote unquote band, the real people behind it, one of them has no musical experience. He's an artist.
Yeah,
Which,
well, it certainly shows in the music videos. They are very heavily art inspired, and the animation style changes from one to the next.
I wouldn't say it's incorrect. I wouldn't say it's incorrect to say that Gorillaz is a very visual band.
Oh yes,
which is a little bit of an oxymoron. But if you ever look up their music videos, you can see how they're definitely set apart from the crowd.
Yeah, and oftentimes the music videos will change. They'll change the music slightly to kind of fit, what is going on. But like the example that pops into my mind is one of their songs that's not actually off an album. It's "Do You Thing," which was actually written for a Converse commercial. But it is probably it is a phenomenal song, and the audio kind of varies with what's going on. Like, say 2D goes into the bathroom, it sounds like it's playing in the hallway, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, and sonically they're a very diverse band. Just to step you through a couple of their albums. So the first album, Gorillaz, self-titled, is if you go into it, it's a very punk-heavy band. It's almost like a garage rock type genre. And then moving forward, you have Demon Days and Plastic Beach, where they get into more electronica, some orchestral music as well, which is going between their punk rock and their orchestral is a very it's almost jarring. And then their last couple albums, The Fall was very acoustic, and Humans was very electric, booga looga looga, and which also has applied to the Now Now.
Yes, although I would say personally, I think Humans is a bit more electric than this album.
Yes, this album is, as I term it, vibey.
Yes,
which we'll get into what that actually means, and once we start talking about the album in earnest.
We should get to that at this point. Yeah. we'll do more on the Gorillaz later. This is probably going to be a constantly coming back to this band. So a little bit about this album itself. It's titled The Now Now, and basically the whole kind of gist behind this album is. Prior to the recording of this album, Murdoch, who is the bassist of the band, was imprisoned after being falsely accused of smuggling by I cannot pronounce Spanish, so I'm going to apologize in advance. I think it's that, yes, Merida, something like that. During it's Humans' Strobe Light music video.
Which is also a good point to bring up, is the fact that this band actually has a fictional plot line to go along with their album releases, which is also
a whole fictional universe. And this led to Ace, the leader of the Gangrene Gang from the Powerpuff Girls.
And yes, those Powerpuff Girls.
Yes, to join the band for this album as the bassist. His likeness is used in the Humility music video, as well as all the other music videos on the album. And he was actually, I read about this before while we were getting ready. It was planned at the start of the Humility music video for 2D and Ace to have a conversation, kind of set up why he was there, that kind of stuff. But there was so much litigation that they had to go through with Cartoon Network to get the scripts
that
approved.
They didn't even.
They're like, it's not even worth it. He never spoke while he was a member of Gorillaz.
Which is hilarious, given that if you just listen to the album, you'll have no idea that this is related to the Powerpuff Girls in any sort of way.
Yeah, and actually because of him joining for this one album, it's specifically been confirmed that the Powerpuff Girls and the Gorillaz are in the same universe. So,
which is very, very important lore-wise.
Yeah,
it greatly increases the value of this music.
Yeah, I mean, this was people already were guessing about this before, because in the Powerpuff Girl movie, and there was some scene where a guy was reading a newspaper, and there was a blurb about the Gorillaz tour on the back. So,
wow, I did not expect this cinematic universe.
I know. But anyway, Ace is out as of now because Murdoch got out of prison September 20th, 2018, and joined the band on the last leg of the Now Now tour.
So specific.
I know. I did my research. And the album mainly consists of the stylings of the vocalist 2D, who has a history of being the target of Murdoch's aggression. So Murdoch's absence kind of allows 2D to steer where he wants the album to go, and it's much more laid back than the grunginess of Murdoch's
earlier albums. Yeah, this album's definitely one of the most low key of the Gorillaz albums.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that in a very very positive way.
Yes, for sure. It took me some getting used to when it first came out, but after a couple listens, it quickly became one of my favorites.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I guess since we got the history out of the way, we can jump right into the actual music of the album.
Mm-hmm.
So for those listening, we're going to try to break this down pretty much track by track.
Yeah.
Starting with the first one and going to the last one. And then at the end, we'll give our overall impressions, our favorite tracks, our least favorite tracks, and kind of where this album ranks in the overall Gorillaz discography.
Mm-hmm. So a little bit of background just about, since Humility was the kind of drawing point for this whole album.
The lead single.
Right, lead single had a whole animated music video put out March 31st, 2018, which was about a month or so before the actual release of the album. It features 2D skating around Venice Beach, California, singing the song Humility. And Jack Black is, for some reason, there playing the acoustic guitar periodically. It's actually said that he wasn't supposed to be in the music video, but he just showed up on set and started playing the guitar, and they decided to keep him in.
Given that this is in partially animated music video, I find that a little harder to believe.
You're right, that is complete BS.
Wow.
But
Well,
the music video features all of the characters. As I said, 2D's the main focus, alongside Jack Black. I think they have about equal screen time. And Noodles is in the video, playing chess against one of the producers of the music video for some reason. Ace is introduced, popping a basketball with a switchblade. And then at the very end, which we've had a couple discussions about the end of this music video off camera, I should say. But Russell appears, and he looks a little different. And he trips 2D, and then 2D's eyes go from white to black, and black's their normal color. And then he can no longer skate anymore.
which is seems to have important lore implications.
Yeah.
But this is the only major music video from this album that I can recall.
There's also the trans music video.
Oh yes, that's
not
also
recommended though. It's kind of
This one though, the Humility music video is probably one of the most beautiful that they've created so far, animation-wise.
Mhm.
It is fluid.
And it also is more of an actual music video rather than a storytelling element.
And I say overall, it really puts the mood of the album in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to the actual music of the song Humility, I think it really kicks off the album with what I said before as having a very vibey sound.
Mm-hmm.
And that's this summery, breezy, almost in a way low stakes sound of not particularly heavy, but with a really feel-good mood behind it.
Yeah, I agree. The vibe I always get from it is sunny summer day, and I can never tell if that's because I've seen the music video and that's what they show, or if that's just the way it's written. Because I know getting out of class when it came out, I would flip it on as I walked back to my car. And it was it just kind of puts you in that good mood, like ready to take on the rest of the day.
Almost trance-like.
Yeah.
And I think that not trance-like, not trans-like. That's the next song.
Yeah.
But I think one of the key elements of this song is it maintains its breezy attitude overall, despite having a very, I would say, strong beat that pushes the song forward. This is a song that you could almost both like exercise to and relax to, which I think is a rather rare element.
Yeah, I agree. It's got a strong beat, but it's not overpowering.
I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I say this is probably one of the strongest openings to any of the Gorillaz albums to date, in terms of the first song right off the bat.
I mean, I agree. I'm a sucker for Plastic Beach, though. So
The more orchestral,
orchestra and electric. It's a weird combination, but they're both right up my alley. So I think that opening is a little more favorable in my eyes. But this is a better song. I will say that.
yes. That opening is a little more grand, but this one I think is the in terms of setting a mood for an entire album.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on to trans then. I feel like there's very little distinction between Humility and trans. The beat changes a bit, but the vibe I get is still almost exactly the same. It feels just a straight continuation.
Yeah, it's definitely this one has a little bit more of a driving beat. I think one of the main difference between trans and Humility is the lead vocals, sung of course by Damon Albarn, aka 2D, in the fictional universe, are I say distinctly more two-dimensional, because he occasionally has a switch where the vocals are almost emotionless, I want to say, or not emotionless, but are very subdued.
I see what you're saying with that, but I have to admit I cannot understand a single word that is said in the trance song. It just I don't know the lyrics, but I like it. I really enjoy the distortion effect. It sounds good even if I don't know what is being said.
Yeah, it's a lot more of a kind of a clubby dance song with like some futuristic like window dressing at times. It kind of reminds me of like the better songs off of Humans. Which if you've listened to Humans, it's not the Gorillaz' best album by any stretch of the imagination.
For sure.
But I think this is kind of builds off what they did wrong in Humans and kind of went the right direction of having it still have a pulsing beat.
Yeah.
It's danceable, it's electronic, but it isn't dragged down by, I'd say, like the harmonics.
Yeah, and it certainly strives to be more trance-like, as the name suggests. And the music video for this is extremely trippy. They go the whole 9 yards. There's a 3D like render of 2D, which is a tongue twister. But like they just turn him into rubber basically, and they flop him around in time with the song at points. And like there's claymation, and slowly the background flashes faster and faster. They probably should have an epilepsy warning on that, but
it's certainly technically impressive. I wouldn't say it's a better music video than Humility's.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Going back to Humility real quick, actually, we forgot to mention that George Benson is the backing vocals and guitar for that song. Which, you know, he's kind of a big deal. So probably should bring that up.
It's actually significant just because a lot of Gorillaz albums have a lot of features.
Mm-hmm.
Just off my top of my head, Plastic Beach and Humans are both very feature heavy. Artists outside of the band contribute to their songs. And this album, on the opposite end of the spectrum, is very featureless. As much as we just having George Benson on the first song, then as far as I can tell, just having Snoop Dogg on the next song, which we'll get to in a sec.
It's actually Snoop Dogg and Jamie Principle on Hollywood. Yeah. So.
But still, my point stands of the just 2 songs off of the 11 on this album have features, and then the rest are basically just Gorillaz.
Yeah, that's certainly rare for how they usually do things.
And also rare is the fact that really they only have one rapper on this album, whereas previous albums have at least several rappers who do features. And of course the guy.
Sorry, go ahead.
And of course, the one rapper they managed to get was Snoop Dogg. He was also on Plastic Beach.
Yeah, Snoop Dogg's the one constant, it seems, in terms of...
the universal constant is D-O-double-G.
But I was going to say, I feel like that's more of a symptom of 2D going into the fictional universe. 2D driving the direction of the album, taking a kind of step back from the hip-hop, taking a more low-key, let's focus on us, we always feature people, let's grow as a band in our style, that kind of thing.
And I think it really resonates throughout the entire album, because I know for the Gorillaz, the actual band, there was some backlash on the previous album of having too much features, being not really less of the Gorillaz and more of features featuring the Gorillaz.
Yeah.
So I think they took that in stride very well in this album.
Yeah. So moving on to the feature song, then.
Yes. Speaking of which,
do you want to give your impressions first on this one?
Yeah, sure thing. So I kind of have dubbed this song Hollywood, and the following 2, Kansas and Sorcerers, as kind of the quote unquote lazy banger trilogy, because it's they've got a very strong beat and a very almost farty bass or synth, but also are very tonally are very mellow, very subdued, which is an interesting combination. For Hollywood specifically, I think it's a combination that does not pay off.
I have very strong feelings about this song.
I would say this is probably one of my least favorite songs on the album overall.
The bass line is... I see where you're coming from with the lazy bangers, but Hollywood is different, and the bass line is literally only 2 bars, but the rest have melodies. The driving factor in this song is Jamie Principle's lyrics, which don't rhyme, are not in time, and they're just uninspired. Like it has a chorus, and then when they're not singing the chorus, they're singing some variation of the chorus. And the chorus
Jamie
again,
Principle lines are building off that are I wouldn't call them rapping or singing. It's almost more slam poetry,
Yes, exactly.
which could work in some songs. It does not work in one that doesn't have a strong bass backing or really musically too much interesting things going on. So you have to focus on the vocals, which are themselves not particularly entertaining.
The only thing I like, there's the one line about jealousy is gunfire, it makes you kill the vibe. That's clever. I like that.
That's a good. It's
a clever saying, not well sung / slammed.
And then, of course, when you think this is all the song has to offer, 2/3 of the way through, Snoop Dogg jumps in.
That is the best part of the song, if I'm being honest.
It is the best part of the song, but even by Snoop Dogg standards, I'd say he doesn't bring anything unique or to the table besides his kind of store brand Snoop Dogg style.
But
of you going, oh, it's Snoop Dogg.
When you've been listening to Jamie Principal's lyrics for the past minute, and then suddenly Snoop Dogg comes in, is in time, and actually rhymes and raps, it's like a gift from God.
It certainly spices up the a kind of not spicy song, but he only stays in the song for, I want to say, like 8 bars.
Yeah, it's not.
As soon as he starts, he's out again, and he's gone for the rest of the album.
Yeah.
So you just get a taste of the dog, not a lot of it.
To me, it felt like this was almost 2D attempting to recreate the end of the Plastic Beach album. It gave me the similar kind of feel with the heavy electric. Or not electric, heavy, I guess electric's the right word, electric vibe, and slam kind of poetry, rappers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and but I think it being here at the first half of the album and sort of taking you out of the vibey summer feel-good emotions of that humility and trance setup, I'd say is probably a black mark on this song.
Yeah.
And just looking at it, it's also the longest song of the album at almost 5 minutes.
Oh, gosh.
So
I skip it now. I can't handle it. After listening to this album like 3 or 4 times in preparation, I can't listen to it anymore. It's not.
And for those,
it does not fit on this album at all.
And for those who are unfamiliar with Gorillaz, it's not untypical to have a song on the album, on a Gorillaz album, that you don't appreciate or care for the first time listening through. But after several listens, it grows on you, and you begin to appreciate and kind of dig deeper and realize it has layers. Having listened to Hollywood more times than you should, I would say this is not one of those songs. It is unfortunately rather surface level.
This is a absolute skip song in my book.
I have here in my notes that the overall feeling is like falling asleep at the club.
Yeah, which is that is very accurate. It's kind of dreamlike, and you'd be better off staying at home.
Staying at home or just waking up.
Yeah. So moving on to Kansas then. Personally, I do not agree with your slow bangers kind of thing. This is a very slow song, but it used to be my favorite, I will say, on my first couple listen throughs. The bass line is similar to what they've kind of got going on in Hollywood, but it actually has a melody,
Yes, it's a little more harmonic. It does have a case of the fart synth again.
Oh, I like that though.
But I think to hear it plays more to the strength than Hollywood's, where again it contributes to that harmonic factor instead of just playing over a rather dull bass line.
Yeah. And it has the same kind of vocal distortion going on in trance, but you can actually hear what is being sung as opposed to just static.
I'm actually not as big of a fan of the vocals on this song as I am on Trans and Humility. I feel like in terms of this song being a little more having the synth and having the driving beat, I can't really read the emotions that are coming off of the vocals. They're almost a little more distant for me.
I think that's kind of the feeling, though, that they're going for.
It's what they're going for, but it's sort of saddish, but not really committing enough to it.
He's not going to cry, Cooper.
He is not going to cry. That is one of the lyrics. But I feel like there's songs later in the album where he commits more to the emotion of the song, the more sad, keeping to the kind of more mellow blue emotions. In this one, it feels he's got one foot in each door. Though I still like this song. I think especially the breakdown in the middle where the beat drops out, gives a very good vibe. It mixes up the song and makes you appreciate the synth a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I'd say out of the songs on this album that are named after Midwestern states, uh, Kansas is the lesser of those two songs.
But I'd say it fits.
I'd say it's definitely a step up from Hollywood.
Oh yeah, for sure. Hollywood's the
which
just leave it there.
It definitely picks up the baton of having the of keeping the mood of the album, which I think is for this type of album is incredibly important. Where if you kind of get whiplash between going back and forth, it can hurt the experience.
And after Hollywood, I think it kind of stays in this chilled out kind of. I don't know how to put it. Kind of just slower.
The specific headspace.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
As if not one of the songs will draw you out of that if you're just kind of glazing over,
right,
so to speak.
Or literally. So.
Keep it PG.
I was talking about weed.
Okay.
Moving on to Sorcerers. This one, I really like the bass line because it goes full gravel with the bass line.
Full gravel, a little bit of that punk influence, I believe.
Yeah. And this one is kind of starts setting the scene for the rest of the album, in my opinion. Like they start putting these random background things happening. Like I should have listened to. I wish I could just pull all these up at the same time to listen to on stream, but we'd get banned.
Yes, of course, that'd be a little more copyright infringement.
Yeah, but there's the one example that I'm thinking of is there's that somewhere in the mid song there's a really deep voiced person talking that you can't really hear what they're saying. And it's just kind of things like that I really enjoy. It's more of a, I guess, lo-fi is what the term for it is now.
It does have a very, I'm not going to say unpolished, because it seems intentional, but definitely a rougher aesthetic than the previous songs.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that the chorus of the song gets me swaying. The vocals on the verses, I think, are a little so-so, but once we get into that, everybody's grooving, once we hit that, with the keyboards, it really comes into its own.
Yeah, for sure.
And the song is almost only its chorus, if we're being honest.
That is true.
But for over the whole, I really appreciate the like you said, the random sounds. At times, it kind of feels like the synth's going through a wormhole, like you're traveling to a different world. Which is, I appreciate the. I get almost an extraterrestrial vibe from this song.
Yeah. And it has that same kind of vocal distortion that Trans had, a little bit heavier than Kansas's was, but you can't really appreciate it. But again, like I don't really understand what's being said until near the end of the song, or if there's not a lot of background noise.
That is true. The vocals are less what he's saying and more how he's saying it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But overall, I say it's a definitely a step up from. I'd say it's probably better in terms of versus Kansas in terms of having that driving beat while maintaining the summery vibe.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you a bit there. I think it's almost on par with Kansas in my mind, but it's just a tiny step down. I think I just appreciate Kansas a little bit more.
I can understand how Kansas is a little more diverse. Sorcerers is a lot more. Almost, I don't want to say one note, but the song itself is not very. It doesn't switch it up.
Yeah.
If it is one note, then it's a very good note. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it puts you in a very good headspace. I feel going into our next song, which I don't want to pull back the curtain too much, but is one of my favorite on the album.
I have to agree. Or it was my favorite after Kansas. This is actually where I would used to always end listening to the album before I really got into the second half, because I would only have a limited amount of time, you know.
And it is the second in our Midwestern state duology. And that is, of course, Idaho. And this is a song I like to describe as a mood, and that is all caps.
Yes, I agree.
Where it's a very specific headspace, a very specific if humility and trance are the happy side of summer, this is almost more of the nostalgic side. The I don't want to say sad, but definitely a little more melancholic.
Yeah,
Almost kind of like driving at the end of a road trip.
end of a road trip. It's coming into fall. Everybody's having to leave. You know, you've been hanging out with people for the entirety of the summer, going to the beach, that kind of thing, and it's getting to the point where, you know, everybody's going back to work. It's going to be a while before you see them again, but you're happy with what happened.
And I think one of the contributing factors to that musically is the fact that this is a very much not electronic song.
Yes.
It is very acoustic, which harkens back to really one of the less listened to Gorillaz albums, The Fall, which is almost entirely acoustic.
Which I didn't even know existed until doing research for for this.
I think the Gorillaz don't think it exists either, since they never promote it. But it's a very it's acoustic, which compared to the previous 5 or so songs, is, I don't want to say off-brand for the album, because I think it maintains the vibiness even with the acoustics and the nostalgic feeling. It's certainly one of the most introspective songs on the album.
For sure, and they really bring out those background noises like I was talking about earlier. Towards the beginning of the song, they're talking about hear the sound of footsteps, and if you listen carefully, you'll hear footsteps that are actually the same soundbite they use again later in the album. And then
that's clever.
My favorite part of the song is in verse 2. When it's float out into the woods to hear the old elk call, and they have an elk call in the song.
I didn't even notice that one.
Really? Oh, I love that part.
Though I think, as you're mentioning, even though it's a more stripped back song, the production overall is on point.
Mm-hmm.
The sort of swelling as we go into the chorus, and the how the bass line picks up and becomes a lot more noticeable. Almost plucky, like sort of like the banjo version of a bass, if there was ever such a thing, accompanied with the layering of the vocals for 2D, lead to a very emotional core of a song.
Yeah, for sure. This is I would definitely go as far as to say this is the most emotional song on the album.
I would agree, though I think it might be tied with a later song.
Fair enough.
Which we'll get to.
Yeah.
Though, if for something that's completely not emotional, if you just want a complete palate cleanser, that's our next song here, which is Lake Zurich. Which also, actually, I'm kind of noticing a trend of naming the songs after location. Mm-hmm. Hollywood, Kansas, Idaho, Lake Zurich, Magic City. I'm sure that's probably not important, though.
I will say I've been thinking about this song for a long time. I've been in kind of a very slow, mellow kind of music mood over the past couple of months. Mm-hmm. So, like smooth jazz, that kind of thing. And this song goes right down that alley. It is, there's not any lyrics, first off.
It's the rare instrumental Gorillaz song.
And I think it would be a detriment if there were any singing. The one bit of talking that there is on this song is, I want to say like 3/4 of the way through, I think it is. There's that same very deep-voiced person speaking, and I was under the impression that this song was more about Murdoch. I don't know if you got that, because there's the sound of sirens in it. It's got
there are some siren samples, no vocals. It almost, I would say it tells a story, but it's not even one that you register on a conscious level.
Right, because that deep voice, that seems kind of how they make Murdoch sound in the songs, at least. It's not anything like he sounds in when they actually have him speak. He sounds like some South Cockney guy. But
he's going to try to mug you.
Yeah, exactly. But this kind of, it's almost like him driving away from the cops or something, but on a rainy Tuesday night or something like that.
Right. And this is the song that really just dives headfirst into the electronica, where it maintains that vibey low-key feel of the album. But it's, I would say this is the most playful song on the album, despite having no vocals, of jumping through these kind of wavy synths, having some vaporwave-esque music and elements in there. Mm-hmm. And I think one of my favorite elements is, despite the lack of vocals, it has, I say, quote unquote, vocals in a way, where about 2/3 of the way through the song we have those that keyboard choir where it almost sounds like
That's true. Yeah.
it sounds like almost like high pitched human vocals, but it very clearly just keyboard synth.
And that really adds, I think.
It mixes up the song right before it gets repetitive and
Yeah.
plays out through the rest of it.
Yeah, and this song definitely deviates from the first half, and I feel like it's kind of the dividing line between the two halves of the album.
The intermission music of the album, if you will.
Exactly, yeah. It doesn't really fit with the first half, and it doesn't really fit that much with the second. It kind of leads into the second, but it's not on the same vein.
I understand exactly what you're saying, where the remaining 4 songs are very moody and not as energetic. Lake Zurich's kind of the last big punch of energy in terms of instrumentals, I would say.
Although, you say that, but going into Magic City, it has the same kind of vibe as Lake Zurich, but now with vocals.
That is true. With the billboard on the moon, whatever that means.
I really, this song has really grown on me after listening. Originally, I listened to the whole album, and I was like, this second half is kind of garbage. I only have time usually to listen to a couple songs. I'm going to listen to the good ones on the first half. But now, I usually jump to the second half.
Magic City is the grower of the album, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of that is the vocal performance on this one. 2D/Allburn. He really delivers, where you can feel him going all in, stretching it out. You can hear the voice manipulation of the production side. That really adds to it. And the vocals, I would say, are maybe the catchiest on the album in terms of the actual lyrics.
Yeah, it's not a long one, and the chorus is very repetitive, so I think I'll have to agree with you on that one. I think Humility is a little bit more catchy, but...
Okay, I'd say, yeah, Humility is a little more catchy, but in terms of, I guess, lyricism, maybe this one sticks with at least me a little bit more.
And it's a little bit more abstract, too, as opposed to the rest.
The
painting you red, white, and blue. There's a billboard on the moon. It's a little odd, to say the least.
Yeah, it almost sounds like, from what I got from the lyrics, I haven't read them, it's just pure from listening, which can sometimes be a struggle in itself of understanding what the British accent is saying. But almost like he's trying to save this magic city, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. But it just keeps drawing him in. Which I would say is almost a little bit like this song. How it once you get there, it grows on you. It's a bit of an earworm.
I have to agree, but I actually just pulled up the lyrics, and yeah, don't do that. It makes even less sense when you actually can read exactly what's being said. There's no rhyme or reason between lines, it seems. It all sounds very good when you listen to it, but reading it makes little to no sense.
Well, that's why it's an album and not a book.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then is that all you have to say for Magic City?
Yeah, that's all I got on that one.
Hey, perfect, because then we're moving on to Fireflies, which I guess if we're saying that Magic City helps maintain some of the energy from Lake Zurich, it's definitely dissipated by the time it reaches Fireflies in terms of being a slower song. A little more bare bones, while still having an apparent beat.
Yeah. I have to say, really the only part of this song, and I've listened to the album probably 15 times in the past 2 weeks, the only part of this song that I remember is the bridge, where, he's talking about being drunk. He loved, love drunk. He keeps apologizing, that kind of stuff. The rest is, in my mind, a little bit forgettable.
I would agree with the forgettable part. It's got good bass, a very strong bass, which it's not on all of these songs, so it really stands out when it's here. And I think the descending keys with the keyboard are rather pretty. Mm-hmm. But I agree with you saying it's a little less memorable than Magic City, Lake Zurich, Humility, Trans. And even Hollywood, which is well, not the best song, is I feel like it sticks in my brain more
Yeah.
than even Fireflies.
And that's not to say Fireflies is not a good song. I really enjoy the second half of this album. It's just it's not got anything. It's not got that earworm kind of hook to it. It's a little.
I feel like.
Or go ahead.
Go on. I feel like for the second half, it's almost like from Lake Zurich on, if you can almost consider like a single, you should listen to these back to back.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't pull up Fireflies on its own and just listen to it, but as an experience, I would say it fits nicely.
Yeah, it's got that kind of distortion. I keep going back to the trans distortion, but that's the easiest example. That's the far end of the spectrum with distortion. It's kind of got that distortion to it again, but where 2D's kind of almost whispering the lyrics to a point, but they distort it so it doesn't sound like he's speaking in your ear. You know,
which would, I don't think, add to the song. Not the best type of earworm.
Exactly. Like there's I can't remember what the name of it, but on the end of the Plastic Beach album, there was one song like that, and I have to skip it every time because it just sounds like somebody sticking their tongue in my ear, and I cannot stand it.
I'm trying to. You said the back end of it. Is that the To Binge?
Yes.
Where it's the very mellow with the featuring Yukimi Nagano.
Yeah, I love the song, but I cannot listen to it because it's just rough.
Luckily, Fireflies is I wouldn't say rough, but like I said, it adds into the album as a whole. It's a sum of its parts sort of thing.
If the album would certainly be lacking without it.
But Fireflies would also be lacking without the album,
exactly.
So they feed into each other.
Yeah. It's really one of those ones that listening to it all the way through fits perfectly. If you're looking for an individual song to listen to, you're going to jump to either like Humility or, you know, one of the Midwest states.
You wouldn't jump to Fireflies, but as an album experience, it very much adds.
It's sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's pretty good, if a little forgettable.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately, I'd say for this next song, 1%, the second to last song on the album, I think it also struggles with being a memorable song in its own right.
I have to agree because without listening to it right now, I cannot remember anything about it.
It's a lot more spacey. It's a lot more atmospheric. Almost more of a lead into the last song than a song in its own right. Mm-hmm. It's rather short. It's the shortest song in the album, at only a little over 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it certainly feels like that, where it doesn't have enough ideas to build onto itself. And it's almost more of a bridge to the ending of the album than a song in and of itself.
Yeah, and Gorillaz is known for doing that. Like the opening for Plastic Beach, I would say is more of a bridge for the opening rather than an actual song in and of itself. I'd
say the one...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say the one problem with that is that at the opening of the Plastic Beach, I feel like it's very much made to be like that.
That's true.
This one I feel is it's supposed to be a song in its own right. So it's a little too long to be a bridge, but a little too short to be its own song. It's in a very awkward gray area.
I agree, yeah. It's the only thing looking at it now that I remember is the ending really sticks with me, with the winding down of the electronic, and this is the point where I was talking about the footstep sound being reused. When I was talking about the training ground for the New World, that gave me some really dystopian vibes with the footsteps in the background, which are duplicated and slightly offset, that almost sound like boots marching. It kind of gives me a weird... the vibe it gives doesn't really fit with what the rest of the album is working to achieve, I think.
Maybe slightly more ominous.
Yeah.
Which would certainly fit in with earlier Gorillaz discographies, particularly Demon Days.
Yeah.
There's a very apocalyptic feel to it. So maybe that's showing a bit here. But I would agree where this song is... this album I would not describe as apocalyptic.
Yeah. This is kind of something you sit down and end of a long day, have a glass of wine, kind of unwind to.
So I would say overall 1%, as opposed to Fireflies, which I think adds to the album overall. If you removed 1% from this album, it would just be a slightly shorter album. It wouldn't really be missing anything essential to it.
I can say without having, when you don't listen to it right now, you don't particularly miss it.
We might be the 1% of people that actually remember this song.
Probably right.
Luckily, we do not end the album on this weaker note. We end this album on, in my personal opinion, a very strong note.
For sure.
And that is Soak Eyes. You want to kick it off?
Yeah, I didn't write my notes far enough to this point, sadly, since I was working on channel art and stuff like that. But it certainly is. It has grown. This is the one that has probably grown on me the most. Because even when I was going back and doing listens later on, like I started liking Magic City before listening to this album 15 times to do this. When I started listening all the times to do this again, this one was kind of always the black sheep, and it certainly grew the more I listened to it.
That's fair. I can say in my experience, having the first time I listened to this album, it was my favorite song on the album, even in the first listen. And while I would say there's probably some competition with some of the earlier songs, such as Humility, maybe Idaho, this still stands in the upper echelons of good Gorillaz songs.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, like I was saying earlier, with Magic City, how that have very good vocals. This is the other song where I believe has one of the best vocal performances on the album. In terms of just conveying this very raw emotion. Like I say, the vocals on Gorillaz albums can sometimes be a little emotionless, and that's on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But this one conveys a sadness, a melancholy, really bringing the album to the close, like before with Idaho, almost like bringing summer to a close. You really feel that this is someone who's lost love or is trying to seek it again. And I think that's really powerful for being able to maintain a vibe while also getting across some emotions that are typically described as negative.
Yeah. I would say the thing that sticks out to me the most about this song, though, is the music, as opposed to the lyrics. They bring in a lot. They really bring in the random kind of sounds. Midway through the midway through the song, there's this growing, I don't know how to describe it, but kind of dissonant chords that builds and builds and then leads into the chorus again. And I think that does a lot to kind of set the song apart from getting repetitive and annoying, kind of like Hollywood did. And that's really the only background thing that they do in this one, but I think it's a bit more well done than the other ones, opposed from the elk sound, which is the best sound on the album.
I'm sorry for not remembering that. I didn't realize you had such strong opinions for the elk sound.
You're going to have to go back and listen to that song again, because it is one of my favorite moments.
I will. Though I think in terms of this has been overall a very electronic album, Idaho notwithstanding. But this song, I think, is a very good fusion of the non-intrusive electronica, playing with the vocals, as well as a strumming acoustics, kind of being peppered throughout the entire song.
Yeah.
Which I think kind of adds to the raw emotion of it and the humanity of it overall.
And they kind of bring the drums out a little bit more in this one as well, I feel. They've kind of taken a back seat throughout the whole album, and they kind of put a little bit more emphasis on driving, with, as opposed to the bass line driving. It's a bit more balanced with the drums.
A little more beat driven.
Yeah.
And in terms of actual lyrics, from what I've gathered, this is almost perhaps one of the one and only love songs on this album, which is it's got that sweetness to it.
Yeah.
In terms of
there was
appearing through the vocals.
There was a little bit of that on Fireflies as well, but I agree. It's much more of a love song, as opposed to there's a section of the song that is about love.
Yes. A little more explicit, and I think it feeds beautifully within the actual music itself.
Yeah.
It's a very good pairing of both vocals and music.
It really works to top off the album well.
Which sometimes on this album, there's times where the vocals are not as interesting as the music, and the musics are a little subpar to the vocals. But I think this is a very balanced one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that would be the 11th and final song of the Now Now. So I guess now we will actually say our overall impressions of the album. And do you want to kick it off, Sam?
Sure, I might as well. Personally, I have to say this is probably my second favorite Gorillaz album overall.
Okay.
I'm a sucker for Plastic Beach because when I was in up through middle school through high school when I was a lot younger, I was in band, so orchestra and that kind of band music I still really enjoy it, and Plastic Beach has a really good orchestral sound, but it also has the electric, which I really like. And this album has really good electronic, and it's very vibey. I feel like I had to be in the proper mood to enjoy it well, or enjoy it to the full extent, as opposed to an everyday listen kind of thing.
I would say I agree with you in terms of like it being mood music. But I think at the same time, even if you aren't in the best mood, this is an album that can pick you up and make you feel better.
For sure, yeah. I could listen to Humility any day of the week, Idaho any day of the week, Kansas, but like listening to it in its entirety, I feel like you have to really be ready mentally to do that. As far as my favorite and least favorite songs on the album, obviously Hollywood is my least favorite. It is not a good song in my opinion. Favorite, that's a hard one. It's jumped around so much after listening to it for so long. I think I'm gonna have to go with Magic City right now.
Interesting. All right.
I was feeling Lake Zurich for a while, but it would get to the point where I'd be listening to Lake Zurich and be like, yeah, I really like this song. But as soon as Magic City would start, I'd be like, okay, I clearly like this one better. So.
It's definitely one of the strongest segments of the album.
Yeah.
Which is saying a lot in an album that's only 11 songs long.
Yeah.
But as for me,
shorter one.
I also agree that this is one of Gorillaz' strongest albums. I'd say it's probably ranks third overall for me in terms of actual albums. Being second place would be Plastic Beach, and then first would be Demon Days. Because I'm a sucker for a little more grungy, a little more hip hop oriented music.
Mm-hmm. But
the fact that those three albums are so different and yet they are all very good albums, I think says a lot about the band.
Yeah. They've certainly evolved as they've continued existing.
And I say that this is a really good album that is dragged down by a couple not as good songs sprinkled throughout of it, which is unfortunate. For my least favorite songs, along the same lines as you, least favorite is definitely Hollywood. I don't think it adds anything to the album. And maybe tied or a little bit above that is 1%, just due to its forgettableness and overall just feeling like it's thrown in at the last half to kind of pad out the album.
Yeah, I agree. I think the fact that it doesn't even make it to my least favorite list shows how forgettable it is.
It doesn't even make the list where it's supposed to be memorable. Yeah. Hollywood is memorable, I'll give it that.
Yeah.
But maybe not in a good way.
Yeah.
And then in terms of best songs, it's actually interesting. I have 3 listed here that I'm debating, and the 3 are none of the 3 are the 2 that you mentioned, Magic City and Lake Zurich. The 3 I'm tied between is Humility, Idaho, and Soak Eyes. And it kind of varies from back and forth. If I had to say it right now, it'd probably be Soak Eyes. But if I'm in a happier mood, if I'm in a mood where I kind of want to dance a little bit more, get a little more active, then it's definitely Humility. And then a little more introspective mood would be Idaho. But Soak Eyes is a very sweet song that I think shows the best that this album has to offer in terms of emotion, vibe, and instrumentals.
Yeah, it's so this one has so many good songs. Like usually Gorillaz albums have the couple good songs surrounded by some okay songs, and then a couple of really bad ones. And this one is probably the most consistently good album that they've released, in my opinion. I have to agree. Idaho's the one that if I have a quick car ride, that's the one I'll flip on to sing along with. It's just the most calming kind of thing.
And I agree with you there. Where I wouldn't say that this album has the highest highs that some of the Gorilla albums have, where it gets good in Demon Days and Plastic Beach. I'd say it's very good.
Yeah.
But it also avoids those lower lows that Gorilla albums are unfortunately tainted with.
Such as Cloud of Unknowing.
So, I guess overall, if you had to give this a ranking out of 1 from 10, where do you think you'd place it?
Ooh, that's rough.
I know I'm trying to put a numerical value on this, but
yeah, I would say probably 8.5 out of 10. It's a very strong album, and I'd be open to listening to it most of the time. It's just that little bit of, you kind of have to be a lot more relaxed to appreciate it fully. That kind of brings the rating down, in my opinion. Like if I'm raring to go, Humility is perfect, but everything else kind of is like, all right, well now my energy is kind of sapped away.
right, not in a negative way, but
Yeah.
it's certainly an introspective album.
For sure.
And
yeah.
I think I'm in about the same range. I'm probably between a 7.5 and 8, leaning towards an 8, where I think this album is one where you have to be in a mood, which is I think is to its benefit, especially when you're in that mood. But it's got some fat that I think it could be trimmed, and maybe some of the songs aren't as catchy or memorable as some of other Gorillaz hit singles. But as a package as a whole, it's a very good album.
I agree. It's one that I've been finding myself listening to even before we were talking about doing this. It's just a good song or a good album to fall back to, and spend the evening listening to. Or if you're doing some work, it's a good thing to kind of have on in the background. It doesn't try and make itself too much the main focus.
Which I think it knows exactly what it is,
Yeah.
and it plays to that strength.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, and I think that's about it. If you have any final thoughts.
No, yeah, we've summarized pretty much all I have to say about this.
Yeah, so that is our review / discussion about the Gorillaz, the Now. And hopefully we'll be able to do this again rather soon with a completely new album.
Yeah, the plan is next Sunday, if that works for you. But
I'm completely down for that.
I'm not sure what we want to do yet. You have any?
That'll be a post-podcast discussion.
Fair enough.
But I'm sure whatever we do is completely different.
Yeah, we're not. At least I think we shouldn't jump straight to Gorillaz again. We should go somewhere else.
Yeah. So thank you all for listening.
Yeah. Hopefully
we can catch you again next week.
Yeah.
Should we have some sort of sign off lingo?
Yeah, we really.
Your shop's been fixed.
we need to figure out some of this intro music, outro music, stream starting kind of stuff. Some kind of car-related tagline.
Well, I guess in the meantime, we can just say thanks for listening.
Yeah.
And we hope to see you again soon.
Hopefully, this album will help you get through your week a little bit.
And that's all we can ask for.
See you next Sunday.